back to the Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. Going to be spending some time talking with Andrew Zatlin, and he is the Moneyball economist, and he's editor of Moneyball Economics. And delighted to have him on the show. How are you, sir?
Kevin, good morning, man. I think we should get off the radio show because the market's not moving. One of us isn't doing our job.
Hey, it would have to be you because I think it's all a scam anyway. So, Moneyball Economics, you responded to a... I'm sorry?
How is that possible? A scam? The stock market? Wow.
yeah. It's kind of a funny game they do over there. But I like what you do. I like Moneyball Economics. It kind of reminds me of Freakonomics. Have people made that comparison before?
They have. Now, the downside is when we talk Moneyball economics, nobody ever compares me to Brad Pitt. Now, I'm not joking.
Yeah.
But, if we're talking comparisons. But, yeah, it is a Freakonomics thing in the sense that, common sense, everyday situations can speak to us and tell us what's going on in the broader economic picture.
Yeah. I think there's this disconnect between policymakers and reality. There's this concept, in economics, positive theory versus normative. And the reality is that the positive is what's real. It's what's actually going to happen. The normative is what you hope it would happen. And unfortunately, it seems like most public policy is built on the latter rather than on the former. And that's why we're so disappointed by the results.
I would keep it even at a much more fundamental level, just to speak to that disconnect. Think of it this way. The Internet, not even 20 years old, really, but maybe in the last decade, it's dramatically changed what we buy. It's dramatically changed where we buy, how we buy. It's changed the global economy, and our policymakers all got their PhDs before the Internet existed. Their worldview is pre-Internet age. It's old school. It's like they're talking horse and buggies, and we're already in cars. I think that's the starting point for any discussion about the disconnect. The people who are looking at policy don't understand the fundamental structural changes that have happened because they don't understand it. And so they've misdiagnosed and they're misprescribing. And this is a real challenge.
That's a very profound point. And so you've got someone, I can't remember his name, my goodness, not the current Prime Minister of England, the one immediately before him, who is kind of a placeholder between Tony Blair and the current one.
They come and go in a blur.
Yeah. Well, the Prime Minister before the current one, David Cameron, before Cameron,
yep.
His parting present, because he knew the writing was on the wall, people had enough of labor after so many, years of labor, and the writing was on the wall. His parting present was to give the top income earners the highest tax rate of any of the countries in Western Europe. And sure enough, within 2 years, half of all of those people in that tax rate had moved for tax purposes, creating a financial shortfall of huge consequences. And so it would seem to me in the 21st century, if you're going to be clever about tax rates, you would maybe develop a policy in which you would link your tax rate to the lowest tax rate of the G12 and figure out how to have revenues in that, but know that if you do that, you're going to have revenue creators coming out of your ears just because of the tax environment you create. The world is really that small now, isn't it?
Well, we're talking politicians who have a very short time horizon. They want to get elected. They're going to do what they need to do to get elected in the short term. And the economy takes a couple years for trends to emerge and develop. And I look at the economy as like an old-fashioned watch, not an electronic watch. We've got a lot of moving parts and pieces. I think that policymakers are overcomplicating things at one level, and that's where Moneyball economics comes in and says, look, there are some complexities here, but let's not overcomplicate it. But then let's not oversimplify it. It's not a simple matter of here's the magic bullet or if we only tease this one thread. But you have to start off with the right perspective and right framework before you move forward. Then and only then can you say, hey, here are the pieces that really matter, and that's what we want to focus on. When the folks at the top are relying on information and they're relying on data points that were developed 60, 70 years ago, can I give you one example that was just in the news last week? Retail.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, let's talk retail. So retail comes out. We've had some pretty softer macroeconomic data coming out, and I've got my own view about why. I'm not henny penny here. I'm very, very optimistic, not overly bullish, but I'm optimistic. Retail numbers come out and they're soft, and everyone gets upset. And they're saying, well, this is what we heard, and I'm going to give you the reality. What we heard across the board, Bank of America saying, geez, this is terrible, how is this happening? The idea is gas prices falling. Okay, that's fine. That's a gas dividend. I'm getting some money back in my pocket. But the problem is people were saying, it should be recycled 100%. So if it's coming off one side on retail, it should be entering retail on the other side 100%. Now, I'm commonsensical. Retail doesn't cover 100% of consumer spending. It doesn't include things like recreation. I don't know if you've noticed the earnings releases, but every hotel chain out there is crushing the ball. Why? Because people are traveling. They're going after experiences over things.
Yeah.
Those experiences aren't showing up in that one benchmark that says retail. It shows up in one part of retail. It shows up in outside dining and drinking. Basically, am I taking the kids out to dinner, taking the wife out to the movies? As a matter of fact, that particular subcomponent of retail shot up to double digits. It's the fastest growing part of retail.
That's
so
interesting.
On the one hand, you've got folks out there who are locked into certain data points, and you've got this institutionalized behavior that says these are the data points. They've worked for decades. And on the other hand, you have guys like me coming and saying, fresh perspective. Let's reevaluate some of these data points. Oh, retail is only a slice of consumer spending. If you go beyond retail, you see that people are not only feeling good. If you look at casinos.
Hey, Andrew, I got lots of questions, and so you have lots of examples.
Sorry,
and we have a short time frame, so I'm going to ask you to reel it in. And I know you're like me; we could weave one story into another. So let me ask you, what was your economics background?
Actually, I have an undergraduate degree, double degree in economics and history, and then I went on to Kyoto University and was a research fellow in economics. But then what happened was I got my hands dirty. I really like the world of business. It's one thing to sit back and sort of in the ivory tower and say, look at this trend, look at that trend. It's quite another to say, so how are we going to execute? What are we going to do about that? I'm an applied guy. I want to do things with it. And so I took that background, quickly got an MBA. I apologize for actually having an MBA. Got an MBA from Berkeley. But then jumped.
Well, that kind of mitigates that, right? The Berkeley part.
Exactly. Go Bears. But what I wanted to do was take that familiarity with information, that data-driven approach, and start applying it in Silicon Valley. And that's what I did. So my career trajectory was harnessing that laser-like focus on spotting the trends and sort of keeping an open mind in terms of, because Silicon Valley starting in the 90s, the whole world was changing, and it's like, wow, you had to be very open to innovation and ideas and look at all this big data information that was coming in. So I started to harness that and then would spot market trends and work with the sales teams in terms of executing, going out to accounts, showing them things they didn't even know was going on, and we could come in proactive. So driving business. And then I realized in the recession, the Great Recession, I realized there was a huge disconnect between what we were hearing, remember the great Ben Bernanke, everything's contained, and what we were seeing. And that's when I realized that there was a real gap in the way the world was being measured and the way it was being presented and the way it really was functioning, that things were just moving too fast for mainstream and conventional economists and then the policymakers and on downstream.
Right.
So that's my background.
So, Andrew, with only a couple minutes left, so I have a couple of questions for you. Like from a philosophical or school of thought in economics, what do you what resonates with you?
My God, man, there's so much dogma out there. Are you Milton Friedman's pet? I look at it this way. I'm a supply chain guy. I believe I don't really subscribe to any particular view. I think Keynes had some pieces that were smart. I think everyone has something they can bring to the dialogue, but if you get too locked into one worldview, you're missing out. And I think most folks out there who have those arguments haven't really worked in industry. They don't really know what makes a CEO's dial move, what the CEOs of the companies are really doing, because they don't really understand or have experience in business operations. And so I come at it from sort of a supply chain perspective. The economy is based on stuff, people, and things. And so you really want to just be aware of what's making that stuff enter excess supply or excess demand. And then from there on out, everything follows.
Andrew Zatlin, he is with Moneyball Economics. That's moneyballeconomics.com. And by the way, you can go there and subscribe free of charge for his newsletter.
Free, baby, free. I want to spread the word. I want to get the truth out there.
Yeah, go there and take advantage of that. Plus, he's got great reports and a lot more other excellent information. So check it out at MoneyballeEconomics.com. That's a great name. And thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Kevin.
All right. When we come back, much more for you. Do want to remind you, best content here shows up over there at USATheReview.com. You're listening to The Price of Business.